This is On the Flywheel, a podcast where each week we talk to entrepreneurs and professionals about the practical things they do to build and keep momentum in their personal and professional lives. Hello and welcome to On the Flywheel, episode 7. I'm your host, Jonathan Martin of Flywheel Consulting, and today I'm excited to have on the podcast Bierman of Lockstone Media.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on today. Excited to have you on. We already have had quite an extensive pre-episode conversation, but so I'm excited to kind of jump into it. I always like to start by having guests give a quick background on how they kind of got to their current career path and the journey that got them there.
Yeah. Okay. How far back you want to go?
As relevant as you think it is to your to kind of that got you to the place you are today.
Yeah. Okay.
If you worked at McDonald's and it didn't have that big of an impact on you, then we don't need to talk about
Definitely. Yeah. I think you know what it is. Probably I was a big fan of movies growing up, and always it was a way of escaping, especially in Saskatchewan. It's really cold up there in Canada. And
okay, originally from Canada. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Transplant.
First generation, actually born in South Africa. My parents are South African.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Dad's a doc. Mom's an artist, and so that has a little bit of an influence on. But I don't want to give you too much of my life story. But basically, grew up in Saskatchewan. It was dark all the time. Played a lot of hockey, but movies were my escape. So. Went to university, dropped out of university, eventually wanted to travel, felt like I needed to go and develop a little bit as a person. And my dad, I went to my dad and said, "Dad, can I get some money? I want to go travel." He's like, "No way." And I was like, "Okay, I guess I got to do it myself then."
That's pretty much what my dad's response would be like, "What? I'm not giving you money to go goof off."
I wasn't going to, no ways, you know? And so it's like, okay. So I got a job doing something really stupid for like $12 an hour and got my first paycheck, and I realized, shit, this isn't going to work. I did the math. I was like, oh, okay.
It's going to take me years to travel for a month.
Exactly. And I was like, this isn't going to work. So I went to my dad. I said, hey, I want to work on an oil rig to make as much money as I possibly can in the shortest amount of time. And the thing about that is that I was like 130 pounds, glasses. I was a beanstalk, dude. I was tiny, dude. So middle of winter, it's minus 40 Fahrenheit. You know, now I'm getting out onto a rig, and the first thing that the tool push said to me is like, "Are you 12 years old?" No, sir, I'm 18. Anyways, fast forward, worked on rigs 6 months, traveled 6 months, and then eventually met a guy that worked on yachts. And I was like, "What do you do?" He's like, "Oh, I work as a captain on a yacht." And I was like, What do you mean? Like, you get paid to travel, you get to live on this boat, your rent is taken care of. Like, how do I do that? So sold all my stuff, went out to Spain.
So you did whatever that TV show. There's a TV show about that, right?
Yeah, Below Deck.
Below Deck.
Yeah.
Okay, how accurate is that?
Oh, it's terribly inaccurate. But I mean, it's
for entertainment, of course. But I was curious if how
but
close
that
it was.
whole thing, I mean, it is kind of, you know, you go ashore, you are partying hard, you do have long hours, you do have a bunch of young, pretty people together. So it does happen like that. But you don't have the crazy drama that, well, actually, that's not true. You do get drama, though, too. Anyways.
But, of course, they're playing it up, right?
Yeah, they play it up. And so I had this amazing chief officer who, the one day I went to him, I said, "Hey, listen, like, we're doing all these cool things, you know, this billionaire. Like, we should be filming it, you know?" And he said, "That's your job now." So got me the cameras, got me the GoPros, and I just started creating guest videos. And then from there, things they escalated quickly. But the cool thing is that he gave me the opportunity to teach myself how to edit, teach myself how to run a camera. And then eventually, just over the course of time, I went back to Canada. After I met my wife, I got a job at an ad agency. I built up the ad agency's video production side of things. And then and things just escalated up till now. So now I've got my own video production company. I am a director of photography, self-taught, never went to university or anything like that. But, you know, when it comes to my career, the only thing that's valuable is your portfolio. So
that's so true. I mean, I think that's actually more true in general than people give it credit for. We worry so much about having the right degree, but as someone who's hired people, I really could care less about your college degree. I mean, maybe if you went to one of the most prestigious colleges, like that has some extra weight because at least says you're smart. But at the end of the day, I care way more about the things that you've done.
Totally. And that's the problem, I think, with the education now, is that people feel like in order to even get their resume looked at, they need to have, you know, a bachelor's of X or whatever. And so the problem with that is like, okay, now you have to put in the 100K to go get your degree, but then after that, now you've got zero work experience, and now you need to go get work. And you're like, man, I'm 100K in debt, and I can't get a job. It's like, it's so unfair.
Well, it's also like, don't sleep on community college, which is like a whole nother thing, like JCs and community college and in-state schools, because you can get it. It is still possible to work part-time and go to school part-time and generally fund your way through it, but it is the harder, less exciting way to do it. You know, I had counselors in high school tell me, oh, just get into the best school you can. I'm like, well, how do you pay for it? Oh, don't worry about that. It'll figure itself out. I'm like, I think that's changed a little bit, but that's like an insane. I don't want to get too political, but that's what, that's why so many people ended up with massive student loan debt. Is because they're like, oh yeah, it'll figure itself out. But anyway.
Totally. And that's the thing I tell, like I've got a couple guys that reach out to me every once in a while from film school. They're like, hey, can I come and, shadow, or can I come check out, or do you have work for me? And I say to most of them, I said, listen, like, you can come and work, but because you're unskilled labor, I mean, I can't pay you full rates.
Right.
And the only thing that you can do is, if you really want to stick out, is go and make movies, go make films.
Yeah.
Edit. You've got a phone, you've got a computer, just cut stuff.
Yeah.
Do stuff.
Just make stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you get a job that way.
I mean, that's what you see everyone's advice is just like, especially when you see people talking about the creative field, it's just like, just go make things. Who cares if they're good? Who cares if they're bad? Just like make stuff and get experience, because I mean, nothing, in lots of ways, the School of Hard Knocks does not, is you can't replace it.
Totally.
I'm so curious about, I just want to touch on the working on an oil rig thing.
Oh yeah.
That's a very unique experience. Like, I know there's other parts of the country here where people are doing that kind of stuff, but it's not common, at least in California.
Yeah.
How was that experience? So do you live on the rig, or do you like go out to the rig?
So yeah, a lot of people think when I say oil rig, they think immediately offshore oil rig. So the thing about up where I lived in Saskatchewan, you have the Bakken oil field, which is inland, but it's a lot like Texas in the sense that you've got the big flat plains. The thing about it is that we would drive to the rig. It would be either an hour away or 2 hours away, so you'd be spending huge amounts of time in a vehicle. And during the wintertime, that could be tough on vehicles and diesel and all that stuff. But the experience itself, it's like, I've got really bad hearing loss because of my time on a rig from all the metal hitting each other, and so it's super physical. It's super dangerous. Guys die all the time, and it's not just overhead heavy metal pinch points, stuff like that. It's literally, there's gas in the wells called H2S that is incredibly toxic, and if you get exposed to it at a high dose, you pass out and you die.
Wow.
It's instant. And so like we got taught how to do self-resuscitation, or not help resuscitate other people, how to don on like gas masks and go and fetch somebody if they're out a pump truck and they go down, you see H2S monitors going off. You have to learn how to do that, and then you have to be strong enough to carry a guy like you, 6'5", who's a farm boy who's been eating corn his whole life, and now I'm eggs,
yeah.
And I have to be strong enough to pull the guy off the pump truck, or at least put a pack on him.
Did you ever have to do that?
No, I got lucky in that way. We had a blowout one time, but a blowout is basically when the pressure of the oil. How do I explain it? Pops the seams on the pipes and stuff like that. It's kind of like that, yeah. I mean, it's basically the pressure of the oil gets coming out of the top of the tubing, and so it's kind of a dangerous situation. You have to put basically have to put a plug in it, cap it exactly, and then close it. But I mean, it was a really cool learning experience for me. It taught me a lot about hard work. Taught me about the value of a dollar. I mean, when I got my first paycheck.
Did you immediately go buy a car?
No, dude. I was like, wow, I want to go buy a video game. And I'm 19. I'm like, oh, it's $68 for this video game. I'm like, so that was like 3 hours on the rig. I'm like, no.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
No.
Yeah, it's amazing how compelling it is to, like, when you're trying to decide to buy something. If you're on an hourly wage and you translate that, how many hours you have to work to pay for your thing. Like, I'm literally exchanging hours of my life for this thing. Is it worth that? And so I think that's really important for a lot of people to actually go and do something manual labor like that, because otherwise you can
the value of money and work, they don't really correlate. And so sometimes, you know, there's this kind of, I can notice a discrepancy when people are like, haven't done anything like that, or haven't really had to do manual labor, don't really know what it means to put in like a really hard day's work.
Yeah.
It's like, you can kind of see it, you know? And so it's not that I judge them in that way, but you notice when there's a guy that's like, no, I know exactly what it's like to wake up before sun, go out, work 14 hours, come home, not have time for anything other than eating and sleeping.
No, hard physical labor teaches you a lot of lessons that's not replaceable, and I think it's too bad that kids don't get more of those opportunities these days. I mean, it's just the nature of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're a parent, like, you'd have to really be intentional now about like giving your kids opportunities to work hard. I think that's why it can be so valuable for kids to also have like jobs in high school, part-time jobs at least. At least you're like having to go out and understand the value of it, of working hard and stuff, because I think people end up really entitled.
Totally.
You know,
and
so
I don't know if it's just, you know, times have changed, but the ability to, or let's just say you grow up on a farm, kind of like you have to go and do chores as a kid, and maybe you have to feed the cattle, or in my case up in Saskatchewan, it was like cattle and chickens and all that stuff, and you were exposed to the elements. You know, you develop a tenacity and a resilience to adversity. Yeah. And like as a kid, that can almost equate to maturity. Yeah. Because like, you know, when you have a young person, 11, 12, 13 years old, who has worked on a farm his whole life, has had to handle cattle, you look at him versus a 13-year-old who didn't do that or grew up on an iPad, they're like, one's a man, one's a boy. Yeah. You know? No, it's true. Immediate difference.
I mean, the thing is like, it's so easy to go through your entire childhood without like having had any kind of real adversity. But if you're growing up on a farm or in agriculture, like, adversity happens all the time, right? Things break. If you're have a dairy, you have cows. Like, cows get out. You got to catch them. You got to help birth them. I mean, like, just things go wrong all the time. Problems happen all the time, and the only solution is just like to grind it out and deal with it. And if lots of kids don't have those kinds of experiences growing up, you know, and I think it's really easy, as someone who now has young children, I think it's really easy to want to like protect your kids from all the bad things. And that's like a balance, even with my kids being young, especially my 3-year-old now. I'm like, okay, how do I let him fail and struggle enough that he's like learning, but at the same time not like, I also don't want to be like masochistic with him and like make him like suffer just for the sake of like suffering, or make things harder than they need to be. But I think there's an element of like, no, I'm not, you climbed up there, I'm not going to take, this is a very simple example. You got up there, I know you're perfectly capable of getting down. I am not going to bring you down. That's you know, right. And letting them figure those things out.
No, so. I mean, we were talking about this before the podcast, but I'll make sure that I give a little context for the viewers. So like that whole thing about creating kind of difficulty in your life, or creating kind of resistance. So like there's elements of, that's why I think cold plunging is such a big deal right now. It's like, other than the health benefits, like, oh, it's better than a cup of coffee and all that, but it's the fact that you go get naked, get into a tub, and have to sit there that's like freezing cold. You're putting yourself in a mental place of having to endure something that's incredibly uncomfortable. And like that muscle needs to be massaged in order for you to feel good about everything else in your life. Yeah. And so like the problem is like we've got it so comfortable, dude. Yeah. My floor is heated so my feet don't get cold. You know what I mean? And so like I mean, okay, now I've got all these comforts, but I'm gonna go sit into an ice bath so that I can kind of get back to like the raw root of what it means to be human.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's some truth to that. I mean, I think if you can sit, it's like one of those things, if you do the hardest thing first in the day, then everything else the rest of the day that you have to do feels easier than that. I mean, I would say like on average, probably most of the time, if you can sit in the cold, do a cold plunge for a few minutes, like that's probably the hardest thing you're going to do that day, and everything feels easier after that.
Totally, 100%. Yeah.
Not that I've personally tried it, you know, which maybe now I got to go do it.
You got to do it, man. Yeah. You know, it's not overrated. I don't think it's just depends. As long as you can find something that is in your, if it's something that you're resistant to, whether it be running or working out or ice bath or whatever, there should be a moment every day where you have to do something like that. And then if you can find spirituality somewhere in there as well, like sprinkle that in within amongst all of your
Put that little dust on it.
Exactly. Then it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I think we're kind of into some of the we're talking a little bit about kind of the personal things that you do to be successful, and so I'd like to kind of dig into that a little bit more. So, are you ice plunging every single day?
No, dude. No, I'm like I've done it. I enjoy surfing, so like.
Well, in Northern California, that's an ice plunge.
Yeah.
The cold plunge.
Wetsuits and stuff like that. But ultimately, for me, it's about finding just like, I don't believe in work-life balance because I don't think it's possible. Meaning like you can't have 4 hours of work, 4 hours of regular life. It's like it's work-life harmony for me. It's like finding.
That's a good way of putting it.
You know, where it's a, and I don't think I even came up with that. I think it was.
I mean, it's talked about endlessly. I've talked about it on already, like almost every episode on the podcast. Yeah, because it's what everyone's trying to figure out, right?
Totally, and I suffer from it, man. I'm like 14-hour days, or 12-hour days, or it's like, for example, today luckily I didn't have something booked right after this because we're already over time. But I've got my whole calendars booked all the way until 9 p.m. tonight. Just stacked. And so like,
it's a long day. Yeah,
it's a long day. Tomorrow's the same, Saturday's the same. I've got all day Sunday off. So it's cool to try and find that harmonious balance. And so for me to do that, I need to carve out little times for myself.
Yeah.
Whether that be going to gym or going surfing or trying to find time with friends and family, but all those things. But I'm not really great at it, and I'd love tips if you've got any. So.
Well, we've talked about it extensively. I think that the biggest, not that I'm perfect at it, but it's something I've worked pretty aggressively at over the last few years because, having worked on a farm for the last 10 years, it's the farm is like a demanding mistress. Like it always wants. It wants as much time as you can give it, as much time, energy, and money. There's always work to be done. Like you could work 24 hours a day and never finish working. It's just the nature of it. But so you have to. I think what it comes down to is you have to. It's about managing priorities, right? And I think a big part of it where people struggle is especially, well, there's two areas I see people struggle. One is in like their personal life in terms of health, and the other is in their personal life in terms of relationships, right? So I think it's different depending on the stage of life you're in. Like, are you in a relationship, right? Married or not married, or long-term relationship, and then do you have kids, right? I think those two things greatly affect what you need to do to achieve work-life harmony, right? Because there are stages of your life where it's fine to work 12 or 14-hour days or whatever. You don't have any other obligations. Yeah, grind it out then. It is harmonious for you to just bust your butt to try and get ahead and make progress. But then as life changes and you have more obligations, then sometimes you may end up with a partner that's totally fine with you making that sacrifice for a period of time. And I think that's the other thing to consider is like, everything is how long you're going to do that, right? Working 12 to 14-hour days is not sustainable forever unless you only want your life to be about work, right? And so you have to decide, especially like I know you're married, so my recommendation would be the first place to start is like you and your partner are like what works, what is important to you guys to make sure your relationship is good. Because I think the conversation I have with so many people is that, and I keep coming back to is if I'm on my deathbed, right? Or let's not even go that dark, but just like 60 years from now, I'm hanging hopefully still with my wife and we're reflecting on our lives. I will not remember why I missed some special event with her because I had to work. I will not remember what that work event was or what that work reason was. I will remember, and she will too, that we missed doing this special thing together because I had to work, right? And that is what's going to stick with me. And so I think ultimately that's what stays with you are the moments that you spend with friends and family. And so you always have to consider that what your sacrifice, like in the moment, is the sacrifice worth it? Because those are the things you care about at the end of your life. It's not, no one is thinking about like, oh, I wish I worked more, right. And so then I think it's about finding, I always talk about it being a seesaw, like, there's moments of life where you're going to swing more towards work, and then there's moments of your life where you're going to swing more towards personal time, and it's about just managing it with the people that are important in your life and communicating clearly, setting boundaries and guide rails, and then managing it as much as you can within that. So
yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that. I mean, having a partner that is on board and has the same common goal is incredibly important, but I think also not having extra, like right now I don't have kids.
Yeah.
We want to have kids, so I'm like, ooh, costs associated with that. So yeah. I'm like, grinding, trying to get some stuff set up first. And so like I'm pulling these long hours and long days. They feel good, but the minute you put in another element there, it's like kiddos.
Kids change everything.
Yeah.
They're awesome, but they're one of the hardest things you'll ever do. And so, I do not think it's sustainable to work like that and have a healthy family life with children.
There's no way. No.
So now is the time.
Yeah,
Now is the time. I'd also, my thing to people, I hear a lot of people like worried about being able to afford children, and like if you're like barely getting by now, I get that, but I also think like I would if that's your only reason to not have kids, I would tell people like don't let that deter you.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm not saying that is. I'm just saying, think about that.
Yeah, it's not really. I use the cost example, but that's just because I have these like financial goals I want to have.
Yeah.
And then from there, then I'll be like, okay, now I can put it on cruise control. Because like right now I'm putting in 14-hour days, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing this for specific reasons. And then like once I get to that, then I'm like, okay, throttle back a bit, cruise control, have the baby.
There's an element of that where it's like building your business to get into a place you need it to be before you have then the time to be able to focus on having kids. That's kind of a different equation, so I think that makes a lot of sense. So how are you trying to like the other component we didn't talk about is health, right? This is something I currently struggle with, having young children and trying to get and working on starting a business and stuff, is lots of times people sacrifice their health in order to work more and don't carve out those times for themselves. How are you doing that in your own life?
Oh man, it is a constant struggle for me because my work can change. Like I can be gone for 2 or 3 days, or I can be gone for a week, or I can be pulling a morning shoot or an afternoon shoot. Dude, I just try to make it a priority. And I have this 2-day rule where it's like I don't let myself miss more than 2 days. So I missed yesterday, and I was supposed to go to work out here at 12, and if I can't make it, I'm going to just put on my running shoes and run as hard as I can for 30 minutes. That's it. Like I just need that 30 minutes to do something. And so there's these like non-negotiables that I try to set with myself, and obviously I'm not perfect and I mess up, but when it comes to like being consistent with it, the only thing that helped me actually do that in the last 6 months was I had like kind of a little bit of a health scare with the doc. The doc told me I have super high cholesterol and blood pressure, and I was like 32 years old. I'm like, what?
Gotta lock in.
Dude, what is this? I'm like, I can't just eat fried food and steak. Are you telling me so? Damn, I really like my beer. And so so that helped kind of shake me out of my, oh wow, okay, I've been putting it, not prioritizing. And so now it has become, work-life harmony and working out are in the top bracket there.
That's a good insight to just like kind of set some like the idea of non-negotiables, or setting like a framework for yourself, not just like, hey, I'm gonna try and work out today, but no, every 2 days I gotta try and do something, and so having a concrete kind of target I do think helps, as opposed to just kind of this amorphous like I need to work out more.
Yeah, and what I also enjoy too is like, I'm not a bodybuilder, obviously, but
you look great.
Thanks.
You look great.
But I'm not here like to go in all Hulk mode. What I like is to go to do something that's within a group setting. So there's this joke about how do you know someone does CrossFit? They'll tell you. So I'm going to tell you right now. But I go to CrossFit, and there's
CrossFit is its own kind of religion.
It's a cult, dude.
That
it's a total cult.
Orange Theory is another one that's kind of like that. Yeah.
I did Orange Theory for a little while. It's great. It's fun. But the thing that I like is the group setting. The fact that I don't have to come prepped. The workout's there for me. All the equipment's there. And then all I do is I pick one of the guys in the class, and I'm like, I'm going to try and beat him. And so that helps me. I'm a competitive guy. And then I also get that camaraderie of like 12 of us. At the end of it, we're totally gassed, and we're like, oh yeah, for fist bumps and stuff like that. That for me is really good. That's how I can stay at least way more consistent too. And there's a little bit of an accountability because, if you're going to this class and you're there frequently, and you don't go, and then someone's like, "Hey, I didn't see you."
Yeah.
Damn it.
Plus, you're paying money for it and not going.
Totally.
Yeah. No, I should revisit that because that was kind of my thing, is that trying to go to some sort of fitness classes because it's scheduled. Like you put something on the calendar, you schedule it, and you feel obligated to go. As opposed to just going to the gym, you're like, yeah, you put it on your calendar, but no one's expecting you to be there. You're not like, you could just cancel. There's no repercussions. There's no pressure to go.
Right.
You know, so I should definitely revisit that.
And like when I worked a 9 to 5, you know, when I was at the ad agency back in the day, it was so much easier to find time to go to I would just clock off at 5 and I'd be at the gym at 5:05.
Yeah.
You know, bang. But now, because business owner, I don't work 9 to 5. I work 24/7. It's so easy for me to go at like in the afternoon. I'm like, ooh, got too many things on the plate. Got to get this out. Got to do this. You know, it's like, and then I'll just be like, I'm not going. You know, and then I'll feel good about it, and then have a tub of ice cream later. You know what I mean? So, I think routine is like so much more important for guys like us, where we put it in the calendar, non-negotiable, time blocked.
Yeah,
and you make
that's
it happen.
100%. Definitely, you need to get better about that because I do it with other stuff like podcasting.
Totally.
So let's talk a little bit, because we've talked a lot about the personal stuff. Let's talk a little bit about business and your approach to business. So I kind of want to start with you're going out, you're filming content. Like, talk a little bit more about what you're doing on a day-to-day for people.
My day-to-day? Video production company. So what we do is we go out, we help businesses and brands create the content for their marketing material or for their social medias, which is all marketing material. Ultimately, what my day looks like is 90% coming up with ideas and managing all the pre-production, and then 10% is actually the filming part, which is like, I wish it was the other way around, because I love being on set, love running the camera, love directing and having all the crew and the talent and all that stuff. That's so much more fun for me than sitting in a desk and you know, doing an edit or whatever. But
so the conversation we need to have then outside the podcast is how do we change that ratio?
I mean, tomorrow you're coming to my place. We're gonna have that.
So we could have that conversation. But so I was about to ask you what's the best part and the worst part about what you do, but I think you just answered that question.
Yeah, you know, honestly, I do really enjoy interacting with the client, coming up with really cool concepts, and then making sure we can execute on that and plan that. So I love producing, but the funnest part for me is going out with the camera, setting up the lights, getting a beautiful shot. There's nothing better than, or whether that be getting a really well-lit, interesting shot, or interacting with an actor, or even climbing up the side of a mountain to get a really great shot, like physically. Yeah, I think my old manual labor days kind of, and my work on the yachts and all that kind of have parallels with, like, I do enjoy using my body to get shots and do stuff like that. So
that's cool. I think there's an, you know, I was just thinking about as you were saying that there's an element of creating stuff, like, you know, or being a creative that's a lot like being in the trades. I mean, they're very like related in a way people don't think about it, you know, in that the reason I enjoy working with my hands, and I think this is the reason a lot of guys like mowing the lawn, and when I say I like mowing the lawn, because as soon as I start mowing, something has been done. Like, I have evidence of work that I've done.
Check.
The grass has gone from here to here, right? And I think that's what's so satisfying about being in the trades. And in some way, what you're doing is a trade. You know, you have to practice at it. You have to be skilled at it. You are, like, there is a physical element of it, and you're creating something in the same way that someone building a house is creating a house from nothing, and there's something so satisfying about saying, hey, at the end of the day, like, there's something here and something exists that did not exist before.
And yeah, you've absolutely nailed that. I mean, when it comes to pushing paper or doing, let's say, data entry or something like that, it's really, I mean, I would not be able to last very long doing that kind of thing. But that being said, there's an element of that in my gig where it's like, okay, there's a lot of moving parts and you might not see what's happening, but then there's that moment of, whoop, everything comes up, lights, creation, then you get an end result. And so, like, that is fulfilling, I think, in that component. Yeah,
there's nothing better than working hard at something than creating something from nothing. So what makes you, you're chugging along, it seems like you're getting good momentum in your business. What do you feel like makes you different from the other guys?
Oh man, I think about this all the time. I genuinely wonder, like, talent is cheap. People are super, super good at what there are guys out there that are way, way, way better than me. Mm-hmm. I think the only thing that I try to do differently is I try to be a really, really good guy on set. Like, the only thing I want is people to feel like they've had a really great time with me. At the end of the day, the product, yeah, it matters, and the results, yeah, it matters. But like, there's that old saying about like people won't remember what you did for them; they'll only remember how you made them feel. And so like that is something that I try to absolutely put at the forefront of my mind, because I can get like really serious about what I do. I could get like, okay, we got to get the things done, and But at the end of the day, I mean, I don't want to make anyone feel rushed or not considered or like I brushed them off or anything. So that's kind of my ethos. It's my kind of my driving factor. It doesn't necessarily make me stand out. I don't think so. I think most people are really great. But when it comes to a director or a business owner, you don't want to be that like tortured artist that makes everyone feel like shit on set. Like, that's just,
it's great for movies and TV shows, but not great for everyday life.
No, I mean, even then, I mean, why be a dick? You know?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm saying in the context of like us watching someone be like that in a movie, not actually in the actual making of the movie.
But there are guys like that. Oh yeah. Yeah, you see it all the time. I mean, dude. Yeah, I don't want to be like that at all. So, it's cool to watch it.
Yeah. Well, I think, and that comes back. It's so funny because there's already, even in only having done a handful of episodes, there's already like these trend lines I see in my conversations with people. One is like figuring out work-life balance. The other one is relationships, because that's really what you're telling me is that what differentiates you is your relationships with people, whether it's the client or the people you're working with on set. It's your ability to collaborate with them, to nurture the relationship. How you make them feel is so critical to having a successful business, because ultimately you're not on an island, right? You're trying to build relationships with customers, and they're gonna want to buy from you because of how that relationship makes them feel.
Totally. And in my industry, it's a funny thing. Often you have people, they gatekeep, like especially the older guys, because they're tricks of the trade and they don't want to collaborate. There's this new trend happening where there's a lot of YouTube. You watch it. You see the YouTubes, Peter McKinnon's and all those guys that really share the inner workings, look under the hood type of situation. People love that. And so I don't want to be that guy. I want to be a guy that people can come and talk to, and I'll just give them all of everything I know. Why? Because it's all about the implementation of it. Yeah. And with my stuff, with my career, with my industry, I could give 6 guys a creative brief, the footage, and music, a selection of music, and all 6 of them would cut something different. Yeah. With all the same information. And so like that means that from my perspective, we're all individuals, and there's no reason that we should not collaborate, because our individuality makes us unique.
Right. So, and for some client, and each of those 6 different cuts may be different for maybe good for 6 different clients.
Totally.
And not all the same client wouldn't like all of those products either.
Yeah, it could literally be the same footage for the same client, all with the same objective. Each person's different, and I would cut one thing differently on one day than on the next. And so like the way we film it, even all of this is just variables, And so at the end of the day, I want to do it again.
Yeah, and that's how I feel too, building my business. I mean, the whole premise of my business is that I'm helping people run their businesses better. Well, I'm not trying to gatekeep information behind a paywall. Right. I'm not giving you any advice or any opinions about your business until you pay me money. Well, that's crazy, right? My feeling is like, if I provide value to you, regardless of whether or not we're actually working together, and you feel like that's real value, then that's going to make you say, hey, like, oh, he has good insights. If I actually pay him to really concentrate on my business, what can we actually come up with? What can he actually help me do?
Have you heard of a guy, Alex Hormozy?
No.
Read his books? Oh,
no.
Dude, I'm going to have to give it to you. So he's got the 2 books, $100 Million Lead and $100 Million Offer. And so there's a big backstory about who the guy is, but he's young. He's 33, multi-millionaire. He's got a business called acquisition.com. Anyways, his idea is, he gives away information for free. His books are only $1 on Amazon. That's the lowest you could literally
list stuff
price
for
them.
Yeah.
And so he put in all this effort, all this time, and he's teaching people everything he knows. So what he's doing is, once your company reaches like 5 million in sales per year, you can go to acquisition.com and talk to him, or maybe not him direct, but talk to his company, and they will try and see if they can help you scale and help you grow and get you to your next stage of your business. the thing is he basically gave away all of the tools that you would require to get you to 5 million. So I guess his selling point is like, I'm going to give you tools to grow, and then once you get to this point, we could help grow each other. We could help grow, or but the point that I'm trying to make with that is he's grown his following in the last, I think it's 3 years or 4 years. He's got like 7 or 8 million subscribers now, from 0 to 8 million.
Wow.
Instantaneous, overnight success for that in that area.
Yeah.
And it's just because he gives away everything.
Yeah.
Everybody loves him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and there's a lot of people out there, that's what they talk about, and that's kind of what I'm trusting. And even us being in a BNI group together, I mean, that is kind of the giver's gain thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just BNI that talks about it. Lots of people talk about that. And I think it's true, like, because also no one wants to work with someone that is like just trying to sell them constantly, right? It comes back to, my perspective is also the relationship perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm building a relationship with you by talking to you and in providing value to you, regardless if you're going to pay me. And because of the relationship we build, then you're like, okay, I want to work with him because I know that he's going to treat me right. I know that he's fair, and so that's kind of my philosophy and perspective on things. And I think so far it's working out, but
Totally.
we'll see.
No,
So
it'll work.
I think that transitions perfectly. Bring up the book. Is that I like to ask every guest, like, what are some of the books that they gift most often to people or recommend most often to people?
Do you want? Oh, dude, I'm a big historical fiction reader. Do you want business books?
Whatever.
Self-help
I
books?
mean, it's your. This is dealer's choice.
Bro.
What do you like to recommend to people?
It depends on who I'm talking to, because I feel like a book can solve a lot of people's problems, and it's like almost like giving unsolicited advice. I'm like really careful not to.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, but in some ways, like, it's easier. Like if you tell someone something, they're not going to receive it, but you can give them a book and maybe they'll read it, and that's what you would have told them anyway.
Yeah. Honestly, if they're a smoker, Alan Carr's Easy Way to Quit Smoking. That's
Okay.
the first thing.
Okay.
No, that'll probably save someone's life. Oh man, there's so many. Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek really opened up my eyes. Personal MBA is a good one as well. Alex Ramosey's $100 Million Offer, $100 Million Lead, that's a good one, business related. I'm going a little nerdish now. I love the Dune books, read them all.
Okay.
Lord of the Rings, read them all, dude. Any historical fiction book, Wilbur Smith, he's I'm a massive fan of his stuff. That's because it's taking place in like southern Africa during all the major the last 300 years or so, and it's got all these amazing stories interwoven with historical events, and it's just really entertaining reading. So I read that before going to bed. But if I were to give away a book to anybody, dude, Shantaram is one of my favorites. Have you ever read that?
No, I'm not familiar with
Gregory
that one.
Allen Roberts, I think is Gregory Roberts. Yeah, it's a story about a guy that went to India. He was on the run, and it's got one of the most amazing reads ever. The guy that wrote the book was in prison, and he was writing his books in prison. He had to rewrite it 3 times because they like destroyed it, and
Wow.
so it just got better and better and better. It's fantastic.
Okay.
I will bring it. I think I actually lended it out to someone. I'll have to find my copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get
Yeah,
it.
well, I have there is a running list that's linked in the podcast description of all the books that people have recommended and who recommended them. You just grew that. I think you just doubled the length of the list, so that's great. I love that, and I think it's interesting that you have. So of everyone that's been on so far, you're the only person that's given like fiction books, and I think that speaks to you as a creative, right? Is because you're storytelling, and so then you appreciate good stories.
Absolutely.
Not that other people don't, but I think that kind of is clear to me in the conversation.
Yeah, you nailed it. You know what I love to do? It's one of the exercises. Like I'll read a book, like a fiction book, and I'll go, how would I film it? And so I'm doing these scenes in my head. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm envisioning, but I'm like, is that even possible? Would I be able to do it practically without effects, without VFX? Like, is it? And so, like, when you watch a movie like Dune 2, for example, what Denis Villeneuve did, the director, he took the same way that Star Wars was so great back in the 70s, or was that 80s?
77 is when the first Star Wars came out.
They were doing practical effects in that,
right?
Because there was no VFX. The same thing Denis did with Dune 2 and Dune 1 was that You know, when the spaceship comes and settles down on the cement slab, you're like, wow, that looks like really real. Like, and so they're doing these miniature, you know, they create miniature things and they slot them down and sound effects. It's like just incredible visual storytelling. They build out the ornithopter, you know, and obviously they're doing green screening for like the desert parts of it. But they went out and they filmed it in Jordan. You know, build these huge sets. It's awesome.
Yeah, I haven't seen Dune 2 yet,
Dude.
I loved Dune 1. And my takeaway from it was like, okay, story, whatever, but just the cinematic experience, like just the audio and the visual. I was like, it was probably from that perspective was one of my favorite movies ever because I was just like blown. And it's definitely a movie you got to like either if you're watching at home, you need to have like a good sound system and a good TV, or you got to see it in the movie theater.
One or the other. IMAX, go to it. The only thing that I like is that I wish that they would. Maybe that'll be something that they can implement one day, is where they can have like you can put on glasses and you can have your subtitles on for the theater experience. It's like I can't always hear perfectly what the dialogue is, and I know that they do it intentionally so that it doesn't seem like really heightened dialogue, because they want it to sound natural in the space. But there's moments in Dune 1 where he's like whispering and he's talking. And
it's hard.
Mom, and you're like, what the fuck did he just say?
Yeah,
sorry,
probably.
Yeah,
I'll have to beep that out later, maybe. But also your hearing loss that you mentioned working on the rigs probably contributes to that.
Yeah, a little bit.
You know, but yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes you're watching stuff and you're like, I cannot understand what they're saying at all. So it's I do turn subtitles on at home lots of times for that reason.
And also you can just quickly. You know, like, oh yeah, okay, gotcha. And so like the thing about it is, for me, I really am story driven in that sense, that I want to know what they're saying so that I can enjoy it even more. And that's from, I think, reading as well. I read really quick. I'll crush out a book, like a good book, in a weekend if I get it. If my wife lets me,
yeah,
I will sit
fair enough.
Cruise through a book, you know. But,
yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah, that's cool, man. So the last question I want to ask you is, what is if you could put one thing on a billboard that's advice for people that they're going to, thousands of people every day are going to see driving by, what would you tell them? What would you put on there?
Wow, man. It's a good one. Good question. Oh, man, so many cliche things popping in my head. Some like stoic philosophy.
There you go. They're cliches for a reason, because they're good advice most of the time.
You know, I think... You know, I think the problem that I'm suffering from right now is like the audience. It's like, who am I speaking to? What message would I want to give them? I think it might make sense.
This is a general message for the world, right? It's not, because it's just every random person driving by.
I think something that I would write on a billboard, but it'd be for the little version of me, maybe, is like,
fair enough.
Don't worry about what other people think.
Yeah.
Do what you want to do, and trust in the process. That's about it.
I think that's universally good advice that everyone needs to hear.
Yeah,
because I think it's as a person who is a people pleaser, it's easy to end up in a situation where you're not doing what you want to do. You're doing things to make other people happy, and it's the wrong thing for you.
Totally.
You know, so that's awesome.
It's tough though, man, because you've got obligations and you want to make other people happy. And I grew up, you know, in this. It's for the service of others, but at the same time, it's okay to be a little selfish sometimes. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think and this is a whole bigger conversation, but like, you have to set boundaries in your life.
Totally.
I mean, boundaries are healthy for everyone, and so if you don't, and I think there's a big part of that is like it's just, that's part of growing up too, especially with parents. You know, you grow, at least I think the average person grows up like wanting to do things that please their parents. I mean, that's also how you raise your children, is like, do what I tell you to, listen to me, you know. And so that's a thing everyone's kind of got to figure out, and some people it's easier for them than others.
Yeah,
so
I'm still figuring it out. So.
Yeah, well, me too. It's a lifelong learning, right?
Totally. Yeah. This
is
great.
Well, awesome, dude. Thank you so much for being on. You've been a wonderful guest.
Let's do it again.
Where can people find you?
LockstoneMedia.com or Barry Bierman on all the socials.
How do you spell your last name?
Bierman's Bierman. First name Barry, Barry.
Cool. And this has been another episode of On the Flywheel. You can find us at Flywheel Consulting. That's flywheelconsulting.co and Flywheel Consulting on all the social. Thank you again for being on the show.
Pleasure.